Hang on a minute, lads. I've got a great idea.
Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today we're here to talk about the 1969 caper comedy film, The Italian Job. And we're also here to talk about its brand new 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Kino Lorber. But before we dive into that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, some tech and game reviews along the way, and now we do podcasts, if you're into all that, then this is the channel for you, and nothing would help us out more than by you liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So The Italian Job was released in 1969. It's directed by Peter Collinson and it stars Michael Caine. And this is probably one of Michael Caine's most famous movie roles that he's ever done. I didn't catch up to Michael Caine until I first saw him in Austin Powers in Goldmember, which is ironic because the first Austin Powers definitely satired this film in parts of it, especially the introduction scene to all the members of the crew. That is definitely what Dr. Evil was doing in the first Austin Powers, where he's going around the table. Even having a guy named Number 2 is definitely right out of this movie. So that was pretty cool to see, especially since this is my first time ever seeing The Italian Job. I just never caught up to it. I saw the remake from 2003. I saw that in theaters, and that was kind of a one and done for me, given I was pretty young. I was 11 years old, I think, or 12. But I just never wanted to run back to it. But I always did want to see this one, because people of my generation, they know Michael Caine mostly from Christopher Nolan movies. He's Alfred in the 3 Nolan Batman movies, and then, like I said, he was from Austin Powers and Goldmember. But he is one of the most decorated actors that we've ever had. He's a 2-time Academy Award winner. He's been doing this for so long, and he's still doing it to this day. He still pops up in pretty much every single Nolan movie. I wouldn't be surprised if he pops up in Oppenheimer this year, just because, hey, he's still a working actor, and he's still amazing at what he does. And this movie, he's perfectly cast. This is definitely his best role that I have ever seen him in. It's also really cool to see a really young Michael Caine pop up in this. And like I said, this is my first time ever seeing the original Italian Job, and I just really, really enjoyed this. This is a very lighthearted, fun movie, and that's exactly what the director was going for, because this could easily be a regular heist movie where it's dark and gritty, but they were really going for that, like, this is a very British film, and they were very much going for that light British sense of humor, especially from the 60s, and it works perfectly. It's just a very fun movie. Michael Caine is perfect in the lead. You know, he's got to spend this whole movie, we start this movie out, he's just getting out of jail, and this is something I thought was really funny. I don't know, how much fact this is based on, but he's getting out of jail. The guy who runs the big crew in town, he's the head of the crime family, so he gets treated amazingly in prison. This guy, Mr. Bridger, is played by Noel Coward, and he is amazing, and he's just being treated like God in this prison. Like, all the guards are scared of him. He gets his own special cell. He's basically living his regular life just in jail. And, we saw this in Goodfellas, but this guy's getting treated way better than Ray Liotta and the boys in Goodfellas. He's God amongst you. Like, he's talking down to the warden, like, being like, hey, somebody broke into my cell last night. What are you guys doing? This is the problem with this country. So he's basically in charge, but he does mean well for England. That's the whole thing. He's trying to do better for that country, and that's why he gets on board with Michael Caine's heist. That's why he finally says, all right, you know what? I'll help you out as much as I can. Just make sure you do it right, because if you don't do this heist right, where they're stealing $4 million worth of gold in 1969 from Italy, hence the name, The Italian Job, as a down payment to Fiat. Which is ironic, because in this movie, they had a lot of trouble getting Mini Cooper to sign on and give them the cars. They actually only got, I believe they said, 3 cars at like half the price, and the rest of them they had to buy themselves, whereas Fiat in this movie was fully on board. They helped out, they supplied cars, they didn't care. They actually really wanted them to replace the Mini Coopers in the last scene with Fiats, but they, unfortunately it was already written, they had the cars, and I guess Mini Cooper was a bigger name, especially in the late 1960s in Britain, so they said, okay, we're going to stick with the Mini Coopers, but Fiat apparently was bending over backwards to be featured in the very end, and they almost did the switch, but I guess it's good they didn't, because I don't think there has ever been a better promotion for Mini Cooper, or really probably made people fans of Mini Cooper, because I've never been a fan of Mini Cooper. Then watching this movie, I kind of wanted one, because I just kind of wanted to drive it through the subways or downstairs. Like, that looked cool as shit. I would love to do that. Of course, I would roll the car immediately, but still, it would be a lot of fun. And that's really just the whole thing of this movie. It's just fun. Like, yeah, these guys are stealing gold, and, like, the stakes could still be high, they could die, but it never feels like that. All through the robbery, no one's dying, people are just getting hit with sticks. That's the worst. They're getting hurt. The things that get really killed throughout this movie are the cars. The cars get flipped off cliffs, they get blown to pieces. It's awesome. The amount of cars they destroyed in this movie, I was loving it. The last third of this movie is the end scene, the robbery, and like these stunts would still hold up today, and these are from 1969. And you know, a lot of this stuff would be done with CGI. They really blew up these cars, they destroyed these cars, they flipped them down cliffs, and they just let the camera watch it. And I mean, that's just great. I love that. You know, nowadays we would cut around and have like 46 edits in there. No, and this film is really well shot. They put the cameras in the rear of the cars as they're going around corners. Like, even in the opening scene with the Ferrari, like, it just looks great, and it's just so well shot. And like, you know, we have movies from the 70s and 80s that aren't shot as well as this film, and I never hear anyone ever talk about how well this movie is shot, but it's shot great. The way they move the camera around, I mean, and this was probably a very difficult shoot to do. You know, I was watching the documentary on here, and what they had to go through to make this movie, it's definitely really tough. That's why it's very hard. That's why I really have a hard time when I talk about a bad movie knocking it that much, because I just realized that not only do you have to get funding for movies, you have to have everybody in the right places, these stunts, you have certain time windows where things have to get done, and like a movie like this where anything could go wrong. If that car doesn't flip down the cliff right, you just wasted all your time. And it's funny because there's a scene in this movie where they keep getting cars to practice working on the job, so, you know, they're wrecking cars too. It's pretty funny. It's just like kind of a cool tie, and that it's kind of like filmmaking in a way where we're flipping cars all the time just to make sure it gets done perfect. And you can see the inspiration for this movie on plenty of other movies. You know, Ocean's 11 was a big one. Obviously, I said Austin Powers. You could definitely see that they took some inspiration from this, and it's really cool that they actually got Michael Caine in the third Austin Powers movie because, you know, they're kind of paying homage to him throughout. You know, that voice is distinct, and, you know, there's some great lines in there. And like, he's one line that stood out to me just because I'm such a big Batman fan is like when he said, he's like, you wouldn't hit a man without trousers, would you? And I always think of Batman at the end with the Joker where he's like,
you wouldn't hit a guy with glasses on, would you? Huh?
And I guess this movie, like I said, first time seeing it, apparently the big line from this movie,
you're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
That was apparently the big one. Apparently it's iconic. I had no idea because I had never seen this before, but I still, again, great movie. I'm going to be throwing this in the rotation. This will probably become an every other year, maybe once a year type of movie, just because it's a very lighthearted, fun movie. It's a good palate cleanser movie. If, you know, I thought this was actually going to be a lot deeper of a drama. I thought that The Italian Job from '03 kind of took a deep drama from 1969 and made it a little bit funner for modern day, or modern day at the time in 2003. But no, this is still just a very lighthearted, fun movie that I really enjoyed my time watching. I'm definitely going to go back to it. So if you haven't seen The Italian Job and you're worried about the age of it, and you're like, oh man, this movie's 54 years old, trust me, you're going to have a great time with this movie. It still holds up 54 years later as a fun movie that I can recommend you watching. But we're also here today to talk about this brand new Kino Lorber 4K. The Italian Job came to 4K on January 31st, 2023 from Kino Lorber. They also have released this on just the Blu-ray. So if you just want to buy the Blu-ray, you can do that. It's, I believe, $17, so it's about $9 or $10 cheaper than this 4K Blu-ray, but you do get the Blu-ray as a pack-in in this 4K. So if you get this 4K though, you don't just get the regular 4K box, you also get your really nice Kino Lorber slipcover, which I've said it in every Kino Lorber review. I love their slipcovers, especially since they stick to their regular design, a lot like Criterion, so you can line them up on your shelves and know, hey, that's a Kino Lorber 4K right there. And that's exactly what I do. So you get this really nice slipcover like I really love. You slide this bad boy off underneath. It's the same artwork and everything like that. Nothing different, nothing new going on there. And Kino Lorber has their own disc design, so they don't do that individual disc design like other companies do. Now, I would appreciate that, but like I said, they like to keep all of their stuff uniform, and their disc design fits that uniform look that they are going for. And it's a look I can really appreciate, even if I would prefer individual disc design. But what about the visuals of this? Now, I've never seen this movie before. This is my first time viewing it, so I think I'm a little bit spoiled. I got to see it in this beautiful visual presentation. So I thought that the visuals were stunning. So you get Dolby Vision and HDR10 on here, so you have your options. It's a brand new scan from the original 35mm film negative, and it's going to be presented in the aspect ratio of 2.35, so you're going to have those black bars on the top and bottom. So I had nothing to compare it to other than the Blu-ray that was packed in here because I'd never seen this film before, so I'd never even seen it on TV, so I can't tell how much of an upgrade it is over previous Blu-ray editions or DVD or anything that came before this in its 54-year run up to this point. But I can tell you personally, I thought that the visuals looked great on this. Right from the opening scene with the Ferrari and the opening credits, the red just looked distinct and it popped really well. Actually, it looked a little bit better on the 4K than it did on the Blu-ray, but it still popped pretty well on the Blu-ray. I think that Blu-ray that's packed in here, the visuals, it's not much of a jump to the 4K. The Dolby Vision and the HDR, I think they just really did make it a little bit brighter, but the blacks were still very deep, because there are some dark scenes in this movie. The blacks were still very deep on that Blu-ray. I was surprised at how well the Blu-ray handled the darker scenes compared to the 4K. They actually were pretty much on level, which did surprise me. But the 4K was just a little bit brighter, and I thought the 4K visuals looked stunning. I think that Kino Lorber did it again with their visuals. Now, I just want to note, because as I was doing my research for this, I saw that Blu-ray.com gave the visuals 3.5 out of 5 stars, and they said if you've seen this movie before, that they did change some stuff around as far as the color timing goes, and that reviewer wasn't as big of a fan of it. Now, I can't compare it, so I'm only going by what I've seen so far, and I think the visuals look great. I thought they were amazing. I thought the skin looked good. This is a 1969 film. Yes, it's a little bit darker and dimmer, but it looks like a 1960s film. It looks like if you were to compare it to, say, a James Bond film around that time, the way it's shot, I think, is very similar. It's the movie even features an Aston Martin, just like in that movie. Just not as nice a one, which, that's another thing. They had to buy the cars, so they were buying all cheap versions of cars because, hey, they were going to pretty much wreck them all. They don't want to take a $150,000 car and throw it over a cliff. So, for me personally, I thought the Dolby Vision and the HDR did great. The skins looked awesome. I had no problems visually. I don't think it's a visual showpiece or anything like that because, still some source material stuff that we have to go through. But the grain was very limited. It did look like they wiped the grain clear, but I never was watching the movie and going, okay, it's a very grainy scene. No, actually, I got pretty close to my TV and I was looking at it. I'm like, okay, there's still some film grain here, but they wiped it clean enough that it also wasn't like, oh, we wiped it clean and everyone looks waxy. No, I thought the skin looked good. I thought the backgrounds all looked great. The last third of the movie when they're in the streets of Italy, just looked phenomenal. Like the Mini Coopers, the red, white, and blue Mini Coopers all looked great. The red obviously looked the best, but everything looked great. It looked natural. I have no complaints about the visuals. I thought they were definitely, for me, I thought they were perfect. Now, the audio, you have two choices. There is a DTS 2.0 mono track on here or a DTS HD 5.1 track on here. It starts in the 5.1, and I thought it was a great track. I really did. Now, obviously, no Dolby Atmos, but I don't think it's necessary for this type of film. I thought the DTS 5.1 did great. There's a good amount of action in this movie, especially in the last third. And I thought it made great use of the speakers. I thought they did an awesome job spreading it around. It's got that dialogue thing that we know from that time where the audio might be a little bit higher than everything else, but it never really took me out of it. There's one scene I can honestly say where they definitely had the mics way too close to like Michael Caine and everyone who's speaking with mouths, and it almost sounds like ADR, and obviously I don't think it is ADR, but it sounds like somebody with really bad ADR on it. It's only in one scene, and that was the only scene in the movie where I was like, okay, the dialogue track is just way too high, and I don't think it's their fault at Kino, because I think it's just, the source material. I think that's how they recorded the audio, and I just think it's a little too loud at that point, and like I've said in a lot of 70s films, that when you hear it, it's just the source material thing, it's just from the time. But I still think that the audio track in this, with everything that's going on, sounded great. You never get any clicks or pops or anything throughout. It's steady throughout the entire thing. You could set your remote down. You don't have to worry about it going up and down in volume. Everything is pretty much at perfect levels. I thought it did a great job, and it, again, a 54-year-old movie to sound this good, you really can't sell that short. It's definitely something that's really impressive. And then my biggest complaint with Kino Lorber has always been their extras. Well, there aren't any really new extras on here, but the recycled extras that we've gotten from Italian Job through the years are all on here, including a documentary from 2002, The Self-Preservation Society, which is a 2002 documentary about the making of this movie. Those are always my favorite documentaries, is when they go back and look at the making of the movie. I think it really doesn't add to it, and that documentary is awesome, so that's the only extra I checked out before doing this review. And again, I thought it was great. Like I said, no new extras, but at least they gave us all the extras on here. I don't like that Kino Lorber pads their extras with a ton of trailers, and this is no different, but at least they have 2 audio commentary tracks on here, plenty of documentaries, featurettes. There is a lot on here, especially if you're a fan of this movie. They didn't hold back. They didn't cut anything. They loaded that because it's all on the Blu-ray disc. They loaded that disc with plenty of extras, definitely to keep a fan happy. And I can appreciate that, because one of my biggest complaints with Kino has been their extras. And you know what? They proved me wrong this week, because they have plenty of them, but just no new ones. So overall, I'm very happy with this purchase. It's a movie that I wasn't really too thrilled to watch, just because I've been waiting this long, and I was like, it's probably going to feel really dated. And it really didn't. I loved it. I thought the movie was phenomenal. I had a great time watching it. And then on top of that, I think this was a great 4K disc. I'm really happy with my purchase. The visuals are great. I thought the visuals were stunning. The audio is really good. And to load that up with some great extras is awesome. And Kino Lorber always does a great job with their packaging. I never have a complaint with it. Their slipcovers are always nice. So overall, this is a really solid release from Kino Lorber, in my opinion. I'm really happy with it. And, you know, I think it's going for $27 right now. And if you just want to grab that Blu-ray, and you're like, you know, I'm not too into the 4K market, or I just want the Blu-ray because I'm not a big fan of this movie, but I would still like to see it again. That Blu-ray is really solid. It's not that big of a jump from that Blu-ray to the 4K. You can grab that Blu-ray, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed with that either. Either way, which way you go, I think it's a really nice scan of the Italian Job. I'm happy with my purchase. I can promise you, you will be also. I can promise that you'll be also. So I'm going to give this a really solid 9.5 out of 10. I'm definitely very happy with this release, and I'm very surprised at how good it was and how much fun I had just watching the movie. You know, I kind of, it's one of those movies that I feel like is going to linger with me for a while, and I didn't expect that. So definitely a pleasant surprise from me. And anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me on another episode of Let's Talk. As you guys know, nothing helps this channel out more than by you liking this video, subscribing to the channel, search for us on all podcast services, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, search Let's Talk Entertainment and Media, subscribe to us, and if you could throw us a nice 5-star rating, it really helps the channel out. It helps them to push us and, you know, help this community grow so we can keep making videos like this. And while you're out there enjoying your day, why don't you tell all your friends about us?